Okay, now we will talk about a crucial point of alchemy that's um a common error to make. It's the error that I made. Um and if you study the book Taoist Alchemy, Yoga, and Immortality, they talk about the illusory agent. And um they talk about having the twinkle in the eye when you see forms of beauty. And what this means is that um, then they say that this arouses the inner fire, but it's a evil inner fire, and then this creates the illusory agent, and then it's equated to, hey, how's it going, Bernie? Um, it's equated to um, the analogy of kicking a football that feels like you have energy, but the more you keep kicking it, the more it deflates, and then eventually you run out of energy. So what's happening here is that the inner fire, exactly, you got it, buddy. The inner fire is the yin shen, or the white or yellow light, what's called the yellow quartz, but it's connected to the yang qi, which is, if it gets what they called sullied or stirred or corrupt, then the yang qi becomes the illusory agent, as just like generative or Jing fluid, instead of the generative force. And so by generative force, we mean the oh, okay. I know it's a good title, so you got to go with. I roped you in. The the generative force is then the yin qi from the yang shen, which would be the what's also called the positive fire when you have the eyes closed and you're meditating, which obviously I'm not doing right now. But so what happens is that when we have our eyes open, 2/3 of the brain power is used for the eyes, and so we don't realize that our yin shen is constantly going out of our eyes. This has been proven recently in science that our eyes actually emit biophotons, and the yin shen is powered by the yin qi, which would be the negative ions. I know, I was thinking of you during meditation, so that's why you're here. Okay, you and Julia. And so, um, where was I? You gotta stop interrupting me, Bernie. That ganja must be pretty good. Okay, so from when we convert this to Western science, what we find is that I was asked recently about this research by somebody in Canada, ironically, Bernie. It wasn't you, but it was somebody else in Canada. And essentially, what happens is that there's a biophoton signal when we see a form of beauty, and this triggers the sympathetic nervous system, and that's what causes the uh, like a pre-trigger of our jing or generative force. So, you know, if you're a male, then you get what's the word? That's the football. Like it's to keep the football analogy going. It gets inflated. Let's just say that. And so then that's actually the sympathetic nervous system that gets triggered. And so now it's been pre-triggered. And it's usually it can be like subconscious, right? Now what happens is that once you open the third eye on a psychic level, the yin qi will just flow out of the pineal gland and out through the eyes, and it'll even flow out of the back of the skull too, because the pineal gland, as the third eye, is omnidirectional. And even if you keep meditating, you can even have precognitive visions that are based on this yin qi. But as the alchemy book says, the yin qi, um, it has to be directed back inwards for it to be alchemy as the positive fire, because the positive fire has to go down internally um, to create the golden light. So otherwise, it's when it goes out of the eyes with the yin shen, it's called the hun soul, which is the incorporeal soul, and it's considered to be like a cloud. The hun is the analogy of a cloud, and so the yin qi is the element of wood, of liver, and so when your eyes are open, the in alchemy you're supposed to reverse the energy. So with the eyes open, the liver energy now goes to the heart, and it goes out of the eyes through the heart. But when you close the eyes, it goes back to the liver as wood. But the problem is that wood floats. Just keep listening. Okay, this is complicated. You can have me on your show again if you want. I'll try to explain it better. All right. So, why would it become sullied, corrupt, or stirred? The heart as this twinkle in the eyes, and that's the sympathetic nervous system getting activated by a biophoton signal. And it's what they say is like if you see, you know, a form of beauty that triggers the sympathetic nervous system, but it doesn't even have to be like that's based on a thought, right? Because you all of a sudden you have this thought like, ooh, that's a form of beauty, and all of a sudden the the football gets inflated, to use this analogy again. And so then what happens then is that the Hun's soul, as the yin, um, is which is tied to the yin qi, then pulls up the um, pole soul. The pole soul is the yang qi, which is the yin shen, and so then your yin shen actually goes out of your eyes, and it will connect to that source. I gotta do my own thing. Sorry, Birdie. I'm on my own level here. I've listened to Hans. He's nice, but I'm I'm doing a whole Taoist approach here. So um okay. So I'm gonna stay focused on what I'm talking about. So all right. Now, so what happens is that this is the pole soul is again another yin shen, but it's the element of metal. Okay. All right. Okay, sounds good. Thanks. So now in alchemy, for a normal person, the metal is the that's the yang qi, but it's turns into for a normal person it turns into yin jing, which is the generative fluid. So normally metal sinks and then it turns back into water and then it goes out of the body for the male. And so that's why the male is yin internally. Um, but in alchemy, and then normally the wood floats, and the wood is the yin qi. So what happens is the yin qi then goes out of the eyes. So that's what has to be reversed. Is that the wood is what burns the fire. So the fire is the passion. It goes out of the eyes, and then it pulls the wood up, which is the yin qi. So the fire would be the yin shen as this biophoton signal. Okay. So in meditation, when you close the eyes, what you're doing is you're sinking the wood. So you're sinking the yin qi, and then that feeds back into the metal. So it causes the metal to rise up, and that contains the water. And so the metal is the lung energy. And so um, the secret of this is that it's something that they don't that the teachers will not teach their students unless they know that the student has good intention and they want the student to store up the energy. Otherwise, the student won't be able to store up the energy, and so their energy will always be weak. And so the secret is that you have to flex the anal sphincter, which sounds terrible to say, but it has to do with the vagus nerve. So what we're talking about here is when the when you have this what they call the evil fire of the heart, where the heart is sullied, stirred, or corrupt, creating this illusory agent. So basically, you're cycling the generative fluid in the body as the cerebral spinal fluid, but it has the corrupt yin qi inside it, inside the yang qi, and because it's corrupt, then it can never make the wan qi, and so it has to be purified. So what's happening here is that in your body, the pineal gland. Oh, I just turned like some strange hue of red. Okay, the pineal gland converts the blood into cerebral spinal fluid. So when you meditate, especially when you sit in full lotus, this cuts off the blood of the lower body. It creates pressure, and then that forces the blood into the pineal gland. And so the blood contains the yin qi. And so again, normally that's why they call it the red dragon, because when your eyes are open, the the yin qi goes out through your eyes from the blood of the heart. So when you close your eyes, what you're doing is you're causing that blood to go up to the pineal gland, and then it increases the yang qi. And so the whole point is to feed the wood of the as yin qi back into to the yang qi, which is the metal, and when you have to purify the metal, and so and this is how you turn the what starts out as lead or what they call the black tiger then turns into the white tiger. Um, and so that turns into silver, and that's the cerebral spinal fluid as it gets purified, and you start to see blue light internally because that's the concentrated thinking of the earth, which would be connected with the spleen and the pancreas in terms of your concentrated thinking. So you're building up your willpower. And so now what happens when you have a sullied, stirred, or corrupt heart with a illusory agent of the generative force as a generative fluid? Is that you get this signal from the heart because of the right side vagus nerve. So, in other words, the reason you have to maintain celibacy, it's not just physical celibacy, but it has to be mental celibacy. Because when you have this twinkling of the eyes as a biophotons, the sympathetic nervous system, and causes the the ball to inflate. Speaking with analogy here, I hope people can pick up my analogy. That so what that does is that, like, if you study Robert Sapolsky, and he's a primatologist and a physiologist, and he has a book called The Trouble with Testosterone. So what basically, the right side vagus nerve is connected to the testes for the male, and it's connected to the cervix for the female, but it's also connected to the heart. So the right side vagus nerve, it goes from the reproductive organs and then up from the on the back side of the um, of the body in the intestines, and then it goes up to the brain through, and then it goes down the right side of the front of the body to the right ventricle, and this is called the tiger channel. So that's what the you want to turn the black tiger into the white tiger, and then you want to turn the um, red dragon into the green dragon as wood. And so the black tiger is the lead, and so the white tiger is the I don't know what they would call that. I guess it's silver or something. Um, and so when you have the green tiger, that's when you're building up the gold, and from the positive fire. Okay, so what I'm trying to say here is that when you when you the wan qi, like when we're born, when we're when we just start breathing, then the wan qi and the wan shen separate in the body, and so that's why a baby will naturally have the third eye open without realizing it. And if you think back, if you start thinking back to your very earliest memories, it's very possible you'll remember having your third eye open. I'm not going to get into that right now, but what happens is that as we get older, then the one Shen as spirit turns into, which is what they call the sun in alchemy. It turns into the heart as thinking and passion, and that's based on the passion would be the yang qi, which is then the it turns into the generative fluid. So it turns from the metal into the water, and so what's happening there is that the wan qi is accessed through this right side vagus nerve to the heart, and so as we get older, then it separates out into thinking of the brain, and then the lower body hormones, the neural hormones. So through the celibacy, we're returning the hormones to then increase the neurotransmitters. So we're converting neural hormones into increased neurotransmitters. And we do that because when you activate the right side vagus nerve, it ionizes the blood-brain barrier, and this allows the so you're not just increasing the blood to the pineal gland to then increase the cerebral spinal fluid, but when you when you ionize the blood-brain barrier through the vagus nerve, right side vagus nerve activation, then it enables the lower body serotonin to then directly pass into the brain through the cerebral spinal fluid. And this is why you get the Kundalini activation, very similar to what happens if you do a strong dose of DMT based plants, because like I did that in full lotus meditation and I immediately got this strong Kundalini experience because you're you're having a very strong serotonin buildup in the body because you're using the MAOI, so you're stopping the breakdown you're stopping the uptake of the serotonin, and then the DMT is a serotonin agonist, so that's effectively like immediately, you know, rapidly increasing your serotonin levels, and then um what happens then is the microtubules, what they've discovered is that the the collagen is piezoelectric, and so that splits the water in the microtubules, and so the water there's a fourth phase of water when it gets split by the ultrasound of the collagen and the in the microtubules, and this fourth phase of water causes the resonance with the virtual photons. So it's called a super radiance of acoustic phonons. And this is how you access the virtual photons, which is what the Wan Qi is there's a magnetic moment of the virtual photons that have gravitational mass. And so that happens in the microtubules, but then there's the tubulin inside the microtubules, and the tubulin has tryptophan, and the tryptophan they've discovered that it resonates at the terahertz, which is the blue light, and so this is why you'll see the increased blue light when you start activating the Wan Qi in the body, and then that blue light is causes a gold light externally because gold in quantum chemistry it absorbs the blue light to then um, resonate the virtual photons as through the Louis de Broglie law of phase harmony, and so that's why it's gold light in alchemy, literally, because you're resonating with the what the super radiance is actually resonating the magnetic moment of the virtual photons, and that's what accesses your soul as your long-term memories and also your past lives. So that's why, like the spiritual masters, when they look inside your eyes, they're actually going back to that stored up energy that's in the central channel of your body. So the small intestines are called the second brain because they have 100,000 neurons, which is more than the heart. But then the center, the pyramidal neurons in the brain are what have the tubulins that are alpha and beta tubulins. So you get this. That's what causes the quantum non-locality because you have a Fibonacci spiral of the alpha and beta tubulin that are overlapping. That's just like graphene. Like the it has a negative refractive index, like a metamaterial like graphene or boron nitride. So essentially, you're getting a one-dimensional space-time as a what they call a Dirac cone. So it's literally like a super radiance micro quantum black hole inside your body, and that's what enables the precognitive visions, and also you're able to access the ether of reality. And so if you are able to not have this sullied, stirred, or corrupt heart, what you're doing is you're storing up the right side vagus nerve energy that's the tiger channel, or the yang qi that goes to the right ventricle of the heart. And in the Advaita Vedanta tradition of India, um, what you do is you rely on listening as you rely on listening as a super radiance, what they call muna samadhi, or silence samadhi, in the Advaita Vedanta tradition. And so Ramana Maharshi, he explains, if you really study him, he says he had to meditate 9 years nonstop, and he refused to even see his own mom when he was at the ashram. And finally, after 9 years, all of a sudden, he felt this strong electrical shock to the right side of his heart, and his heart just stopped beating. But he still felt the electrical energy, um, and he was, like, one with that energy, and he had no sense of awareness at all. It was just like pure energy, right? And um, and he said this lasted for about 15 minutes, and then all of a sudden the light came back, and when the light came back, it shifted to the left side of his heart. And all of a sudden, when the light came back, then he got his self-awareness back. Um but ever since that experience, he called it eternal liberation, that then cut the knot of the ego. And so what that meant was that he literally, like, cut the right side vagus nerve connection to the body. And so his energy was going with each breath and thought. He was, because your the right side vagus nerve also connects to your lungs. And so that's why, like, if you take, like, tea tree oil, as I use tea tree oil as an antiseptic. It's a very effective antiseptic, but it works by activating the vagus nerve. And so if you take too much of it, you'll literally, all of a sudden, you can't breathe anymore because your vagus nerve to the lungs is overactivated. And it's a pretty scary. You're not. I mean, in Western medicine, you're not supposed to take it internally, but James Cook, when he went to Australia, they gave it to him and his crew as a tea. That's why it's called tea tree oil. But but anyway, I don't recommend people take it internally because you're not supposed to. But it is very, they put it in toothpaste and stuff because it's very, and um, deodorant and all that, because it's very effective antiseptic. And so anyway, the terpenes are basically like an antioxidant, and so you have this. That's the other thing about yin qi. Like, the yin qi is the same as earthing. What you find in earthing or grounding, when you have your bare feet on the earth. And this is what Andrade Puharich figured out, is that you're creating this. The heart is actually what they call a quantum beat, or a quantum undertone, and you actually hear this loud om sound being emitted from the heart. And I heard this when I did a very strong dose of plant-based DMT. When I was sitting in full lotus, I wanted to test out the my enlightenment third eye training against psychedelics. And so, like, as I already mentioned, I got that strong Kundalini experience, but then I also heard this loud Om sound being emitted from the heart. And while I was in this astral realm of seeing the rainbow light, and it emptied out my left brain thinking automatically. So, like, I couldn't even move. I just sat in full lotus for 4 hours, nonstop. But later on, I was reading Master Nan Hua Chin, and this is in my 2012 book that's free, The Alchemy of Rainbow Heart Music. And he described this. He's a was a most famous Buddhist Chan master of China. He passed on about, I don't know, 10 years ago, and he explains the same phenomenon of hearing this loud Om sound from the heart. But he says, it's like my own teacher, Chen Yulin, he described the same Om sound. He said he can hear it everywhere. That is the secret sound of the universe. And Master Nanhua Chen says it happens when you're converting the Jing to Shen. The Jing to Shen, which would be the generative force to Shen is the spirit. And so so in terms of alchemy, the whole point is that we're saving up the energy and focusing what they call the 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 inner fire. That would be the again, that's the yin shen that's connected to the yang qi. So that's why it's inner fire, because the yang qi has substance, because it originates from the generative force. And so, again, for most people, that's become sullied, stirred, or corrupt, meaning that it turns back into water as generative fluid, and then you can, like, even if you cycle it, see, um, what you can do is try to purify that energy, and that's what the small universe meditation does. But also, if you train in the Wim Hof breathing, the Wim Hof or Wim Hof, I guess he calls himself. I don't know how you pronounce his name. It's Wim. I guess it's called Wim, but he's teaching Tumo, Tibetan Tumo breathing. But in Chinese alchemy, it's called Ji or Shi breathing. And I was just listening to Qigong Master Robert Pang last night, and he studied with the same Shaolin master that Chen Yulin studied with, Master Yao. And so when you train in the Shi breathing, it's the exact same thing as the Tibetan Tumo breathing or the Wim Hof breathing. Wim Hof, he's a real famous teacher. He's got some problems, but a lot of people have actually he's had people not survive because they do it in water, and that's totally not safe. So, but anyway, the essence of that training is that you do like 30 quick breaths. And so in the Taoist alchemy book, they call this quick fire. And the whole point is that you're when you do those quick breaths, they say you're activating the positive fire along with the inner fire. And so, why do they say that you're activating the positive fire? Because what they've discovered is that when you do these quick breaths, you're doubling your adrenaline level, and that's what creates the internal heat. But the reason you actually double the adrenaline levels because then after you do the 30 quick breaths, what's happening is you're exhaling carbon dioxide at a faster rate than your body is creating carbon dioxide. And so that changes the pH level of your blood. And when you change the pH level of your blood, then you no longer activate the diver's reflex in your brain. And so after you do the 30 quick breaths, then what you do is you hold the breath after exhale. And when you hold it after exhale, then that activates the vagus nerve. And so you're activating that right side vagus nerve. And because you exhaled more CO2 than you created, then you're able to hold your breath after exhale for much longer than you normally would be able to because you're no longer activating the diver's reflex. So what this does is it forces the oxygen into the brain because your body naturally wants your brain to survive because it uses like 25% of your body's calories, um, and it's considered like the most important organ or whatever. And so you're getting all this extra oxygen into the brain by increasing the blood flow to the brain. When you increase the blood flow to the brain, your pineal gland then converts that blood to increase cerebral spinal fluid. And that increases the pressure in the brain and the water, and then that causes the water to split in the microtubules, and then that causes the virtual photons to get resonated with, which then increases the photon emission in the brain, and that's why you'll see light internally. And then what you do then is you rotate your eyes when you're meditating, and by rotating your eyes, the left eye is the yang shen, and which is again shen is spirit. So that's, if you think of it, you can just call it biophotons if you want. And then the right eye is the yin shen, and the right eye is the yang qi, and the left eye is the yin qi. And so by rotating the eyes along with this practice of the quick fire, and then it's slow fire when you're holding the breath, and then so that activates the wan qi internally in the brain, and that's how you build up the wan qi, and then and it's then swallowed because you are increasing the cerebral spinal fluid in the brain, and you keep your tongue against the roof of your mouth. And when you keep the tongue against the roof of your mouth, that activates the vagus nerve connection to the front of the body. So you're basically, they call it, like you're connecting the electrical connection between the front and back channels of the body through this vagus nerve. So it causes a increased flow of saliva from the sinus cavity of the brain. And but the thing is that saliva has the charge in it. It has the charge that you just created in your brain through this meditation process. And so then when you swallow the saliva, it goes back down to the pit of the stomach, and then the charge gets absorbed back into um, the small intestines. Now, what happens is that through the celibacy, the primary ingredient for celibacy is lecithin, and so like that's why if you eat like eggs or tofu, like the Buddhist monks, they're vegetarians, so they eat tofu. But the both eggs and tofu are very high in lecithin, so they call it brain food in Taoism. And so the reason is that the lecithin, it actually increases the myelin sheath around the neurons. And the myelin sheath, the neuromyelin, is what insulates the the neurons. And then if you look at like an electric eel, the way it works is they store the charge. An electric eel stores the charge in the myelin sheath, the fat around the neurons. And then how an electric eel works is that it's based on the potassium to sodium ratio in the brain. So that's why in the advanced level of meditation, you're not supposed to eat any salt because you're trying to increase the potassium ratio against the sodium in the body. And so this is also what Wilhelm Reich figured this out when he was studying the origin of I don't know what he called it. I forgot his terminology, but he realized it's a blue light, like a blue green light. It's connected with the vagus nerve, the parasympathetic, and the lecithin. I think, did he figure out the lecithin and the serotonin? I have to review his research again, but he wrote it in the 1930s, but it didn't get published into English until like, I don't know, 2010 or something crazy like that. Somehow he made the same, but another scientist that figured out was Andrea Puharich. He figured out that the ultrasound activates the vagus nerve in the body, and then this splits the water, and that's why you get this uh, quantum undertone that um, is the what he realized. He called it psi plasma because it's this anti-gravity quantum potential from the future, but it's also a the same as the Schumann resonance. And so that's what connects it to the yin qi, because the yin qi is the same with the Schumann resonance as the negative ions of the earth and the grounding. And but the problem is that you need to connect it with the biophotons signal, because eventually you realize that all matter is actually made of light. And so you're accessing, when you access the ether, it's this like it's a pure time and frequency. So what they call the when they say the heart gets sullied, stirred, or corrupt, they're saying that's the inner fire. That's an evil inner fire. And so that's the yin shen that's rising up with the when you build up the yin qi, and even especially when you activate the when you open up the third eye, then you have this psychic connection to the ether through the yin qi, and so you can have a holographic um, connection with the emotional energy around you, because in traditional Chinese medicine, the emotions are linked with the organs of the body through this yin qi and yang qi energy, again through the parasympathetic nervous system. So, like if somebody's really sad, that means their lungs are damaged, and they won't know that. Like in Western medicine, somebody could be smoking. They could have started smoking in high school, maybe, and then they get depression. And they don't know why. Like Western medicine will never say, "Oh, the reason you're depressed is because you smoke." But the person will just keep smoking, and then they'll be given some other drug to add on to their smoking, and then it just makes their condition worse, because they never realize that the cause of their depression. Like I literally had this happen where I was sitting in full lotus at work, and then somebody came in and we made eye contact, and because we made eye contact, I immediately had that psychic holographic connection, and I was immediately overwhelmed with sadness, and I just blurted out. I heard myself blurt out, "Why are you so sad?" Because you know, he didn't this coworker of mine, he had no expression on his face, he hadn't said anything, and he just stood there in shock, and then I realized, "Oh, yeah, he smokes," and he just walked up a few flight of stairs, and I'm like, "Smoking, causes depression," and he was a he was somebody who was interested in energy healing, and we had talked about it several times, and he just quit smoking soon after that, and then he kept asking me for energy healing after that, because I would send the yin qi. He would ask for a charge up at work because our job was really stressful, and we had to make quota. I didn't have to make quota, but he did, and so I would send the yin qi into his body. He would just sit there and wait a couple minutes, and then he would thank me, and then he'd go back to work, and then Um, so unless you flex the anal sphincter, which is really strange to do. I don't know. I it's your call, Bernie. Um, so okay, if you flex the anal sphincter, what that does is it activates your parasympathetic nervous system, and it prevents the sympathetic nervous system, because when the energy goes out of your body, that's through the sympathetic nervous system. And I cite this in I have an article one of my you can read my articles on ViewZone. Um, whoops. Okay, so if you go to that website, I have several articles posted on that website, but it goes into there was a study of Montauk Chia, and he's a famous qigong master, but some people say he's not. He's good with the qi, but he doesn't really have the shen ability because an actual qigong master, they're operating at the level of spiritual healing, the shen. But Montauk Chia, they studied his ability to store up and transmit the chi energy, and he does it by immediately converting from his vagus nerve to his sympathetic nervous system, and then back from his sympathetic back to his vagus nerve. And you're not supposed to be able to do that, but that's also what Wim Hof is doing with the tumo breathing, is that you're consciously activating the right side vagus nerve. Now, another secret that like Joe Rogan doesn't know about, because Joe Rogan, everybody knows he's the most famous podcaster on the internet, right? But if you study the praying mantis traditional internal martial arts, Joe Rogan, he makes fun of the traditional martial arts because they don't go fight in the UFC or whatever. But there's a great video of this guy from the UK, and he goes around China studying the martial arts, and so he meets this praying mantis master in I think it's Hong Kong, and so the praying mantis, they're doing their back and forth with the martial arts, and then the praying mantis guy's like, okay, you can kick me in the groin, just keep kicking me in the groin over and over. And the guy's like, "Are you sure?" And he's like, "Yeah." And so, of course, before he kicks him in the groin, he does this like breathing exercise, right? And he moves his chi. And then after the guy keeps kicking him in the groin over and over, and he's like, "Okay, you want to? Is it okay if you feel down there?" And at first the guy from the UK is like, "What?" And he's like, "Okay, yeah, sure." And then he sticks his hand in the guy's groin, and he's like, "Oh my god, there's nothing there." And he freaks out, and now what's happening again, as I explained, the right side vagus nerve goes to the testes in the male. So what happens is, as you build up the yang qi energy as generative force, the um it causes the testes to contract, and eventually they will get pulled right back inside the body. And that's what they call like the iron crotch training or whatever. um that's literally what they're doing. There's even a saying for it in Chinese where they compare it with what a horse, if you look at a horse, it's like retracted back inside normally. um So obviously Joe Rogan doesn't know about this at all because, like in the UFC, if you get kicked in the groin, you get a 15-minute break, because that's your most vulnerable part of the body, because the male is in in Taoism, or in alchemy, the male is yin internally and then yang externally, meaning like their muscles are yang. But in alchemy, you have to convert that so the male is then yang internally, and then and then so if you think about it, you're yin externally because they call it virgin kung fu, because you have to control your biophoton signals of what then activate the heart as through this right side vagus nerve, because it goes back to the right side of the heart through the biophoton signal. And so that's why it's so difficult, because the only way to then reverse that signal, if you have the sympathetic nervous system that triggers the loss of the celibacy, um, then the only way you can fix that is by doing the quick fire breathing and the like standing exercises. Because when you do like horse stance and your leg muscles start vibrating and shaking, um, then that's you get what they call parasympathetic rebound, or it's what the Dr. Herbert Benson called it the relaxation response when he studied the Tibetan monks doing the tumo breathing. So this is the foundation of the training, because to maintain the celibacy, you're actually relying on the standing exercises, because your leg muscles are way stronger, than well, you're also doing the quick fire breathing, because your diaphragm is the second strongest muscle in the body. But when you stand with your legs bent, then you're also activating the right side vagus nerve to the reproductive organ, but it also activates the glutes, and the glutes are being the strongest muscle in the body, and so that's why when you're supposed to do this anal sphincter flexing all the time, because you have to preemptively override what is otherwise a subconscious energy exchange at the speed of light through the biophotons that are going out of your eyes, and that's happening all the time, whether you're on the internet or watching TV, or it doesn't matter. And so if somebody needs energy, um, oops, I'm getting an advertisement. If somebody needs energy, then the yin chi will automatically just flow out of the pineal gland, and that's what the psychic healing is. But that's when you have that the sullied, stirred, or corrupt heart with the twinkle of the eyes. What when you're seeing that like a form of beauty or whatever, um so you're having that sympathetic nervous system that then is all of a sudden causing the energy to go out of your eyes, and then it will pull up the yang chi energy, um and it's a bit difficult to explain, but it's basically based on how much energy you're using up and have stored up. But if the third eye is open on a psychic level, um, the more the yin chi energy is stored up, as then it builds up the yang chi. The yang chi is again based on this biophoton signal of the emptiness, and so that's why it's so difficult to maintain the purification of the yang qi, and then you rely on the rotation of the eyes um to then build up the wan qi through the yin shen and the yang shen mixing together by rotating the left and right eye, which is the right eye is the moon and the left eye is the sun. Rotating the left and right eye, which is the right eye is the moon and the left eye is the sun. And so when you do that, then you are able to purify the yin qi, and the yang qi back into the wan qi. And again, that's then flows down through the generative force, what they call the ambrosia. So at first it's saliva and it's building up the yin qi, but then as the yang qi builds up, that's what you start to see the golden light. And I never reached that stage of practice, or I might have, on a very small, like a subtle level that I didn't really notice. But essentially, what happens is that you have to fast. You have to what they call bigu in meditation, or in Taoist alchemy, it's called bigu. But in Indian yoga, it's called nirvikalpi samadhi. So like Ramana Maharshi, when he went his 9 years of meditating on the right side of his heart, he only had like a little thimble of food every day, like fluid or whatever. So he was pretty much fasting the whole time, and and so the reason why that is true is because the Wan Qi is like a space-time vortex, and your whole body will get filled with this energy, and so your the center of your hands and feet will pulsate, but also your skull, the fontanelle in your skull will open up again, and the bones will get soft and pliable, and your skull will get soft and pliable like a baby. And they call it immortal breathing, but they also call it fetus breathing, because you're actually going back to that Wan Qi and Wan Shen and Wan Jing state when you were a fetus in the womb. That's literally what you're doing. And and so at that level, like the guy studied from Chen Yulin, he went 28 days of full lotus meditation nonstop with no sleep, and then when he got out of the cave and he was meditating in full lotus, then he levitated up 9 feet, and he was spiraling up, 9 feet, because basically his body was made of light at that point. And when I was listening to Robert Peng last night, the other qigong master I mentioned, they both had the same Shaolin master, but he mentioned how somebody can walk through a wall. They can literally walk through a wall when they get at that advanced level. Now, that's hard for us to believe, but if you read Wang Li Ping, there's a great book called Opening the Dragon Gate about Taoist master Wang Li Ping, and he does the same full lotus meditation training. And there's a guy from Italy who went over to study in China with qigong masters, and he studied with Wang Li Ping. And Wang Li Ping literally did walk through a wall to demonstrate to this guy David Verdesi that the Tao is real or whatever. So I just wanted to discuss, like, when you do have this illusory agent, you can correct it through the purification, which is through the heart. So you have the kidneys are cleansing, and then the heart is the purification. But again, how that's working is through the rotation of the eyes, and that's explained in chapter 6 of the Taoist Yoga, Alchemy, and Immortality book. And so when I first did the training, I had not studied the book well enough, because I had no idea like how detailed it was, the information and the analysis. And then, like in the last live video I did, I mentioned the dizziness. So what happens is when you do activate the third eye, you open it up, so you have the inner fire. Then um if you rotate your eyes, it causes the inner fire to go up to the skull, but then you also have the positive fire, which is the outer fire, and that's the golden light. So that's what causes the dizziness, is that if you don't have enough Wan Qi uh, stored up in the body, then the then it when you rotate the inner fire as the yin shen, then it will cause, if the positive fire then goes out of your third eye, then it'll cause this dizziness as a space-time vortex. And that's only explained in chapter 11 of the Taoist Yoga book. And I hadn't even read that far in the book, because I think I read it, but I hadn't really like studied it. A lot of it is like emotional information, because I didn't just read the book, I was training in the book. It's like a cookbook. I was doing the alchemy recipe, and there's a lot of deep emotional changes that happen, and so it's hard to process the information. So uh like when I first experienced this holographic um energy exchange with my eyes open, and I saw a female, and it wasn't like oh, she's beautiful kind of thing. Like it wasn't, it was just literally an automatic Kundalini activation that went up my spine, and then the energy shot out of my eyes into the female, and um, and then I suddenly realized that she experienced the same bliss that I had experienced internally, and then it was such a shock to me that I couldn't process it on a rational level, like on a cognitive level. I couldn't figure out what had happened. And then that night, when I went to sleep, I lost the alchemical pill. In other words, I had the sullied, um, corrupt, um, illusory agent. So the generative force had got turned back into the generative fluid, because I didn't know that you have to do this, purification process using the quick fire and the standing exercise and everything. And um, so then now, as far as the dizziness, what what you're supposed to do when you build up the golden light is you're supposed to hide it like a dragon hides its treasure. So you hide it in the what's called the inner cavity of the lower dantian, the elixir field, and you do that by having the positive fire golden light surrounded by the inner fire as the white light of the moon. So the sun is surrounded by the moon, and the moon is the yang qi with the yin shen. So the moon is the generative force of the yang qi. It's then surrounded by the yin qi with the yang shen, or the golden light, in the small intestines. So what happens is that if you can keep it hidden like that, you have to prevent your inner fire from going out of your eyes, and that's what you do by flexing the anal sphincter. Is you're constantly keeping the golden light hidden in the lower dantian by preventing the having that sullied, stirred, or corrupt signal that goes out of your eyes through the biophoton ether exchange with the yin chi. So you have to constantly be um, building up the energy internally and preventing that exchange through this like psychic ether. Um, or you could do the psychic um, ether energy exchange, and that's what I did for 10 years. So I kept kicking the ball, to go back to the analogy that they use in the Taoist Yoga book, the illusory agent as like a ball that you keep kicking, and meaning it stays inflated, but the and you think you have the energy because it's inflated. And this is like an analogy to your life force energy. But the more you keep kicking it, the more you're just using it up. So I described this to Chen Yulin, the qigong master, and he said to me, it's great that you can give females bliss, but as long as you keep doing so, then your energy will be weak. And so that's basically the problem with the tantra. He says, like, the psychic tantra is that he doesn't practice it because the frequency of the light that goes out of the third eye is a higher frequency, because it's um, the actual, like, light of the what's sublimated up into the skull, whereas the frequency of light that's then taken in um, is a lower frequency of at first. So now what happens in tantra is that since you're with the female is yang internally, um, and the original spiritual healers are actually female, and the energy of the universe is female, and that's why in Taoism, in alchemy, they call it the female green dragon, because it's also called the negative principle, because that's what the chi is. The wan chi is actually the the earth energy as the green dragon. So it originates from the yin chi, but then because it's directed downwards with the golden light, the positive fire, then it activates what they call the wan shen, which is the light of no light, and as the absolute void. So it eternally radiates the golden light, but it's also called the fa shen from the Buddhist terminology, but essentially it's also called the essence. And so this is it's what they call the Dharmakaya in Mahayana Buddhism. But like I said, in Vedic yoga, it's called the Muna Samadhi because it's based on listening or concentrated thought, and so you can never see it. Um, but the Wan Chi is this ether force that in science they call it the super radiance of acoustic phonons. That's why it's all based on quantum biology. It's listening, and it's never achieved through external technology. And so qigong is called the highest technology of any technology because it's based on the secret of listening to the future through the harmony, what Louis Braille called the law of phase harmony. And so you're able to access this superluminal super radiance that normally would not get it would get lost in the difference between kinetic and potential energy. In quantum physics, it's considered the difference between the kinetic potential energy. So when you do an actual measurement of matter as particles, it's normally it gets lost. To conserve the energy, you then lose the potential energy that's non-local. But in alchemy, you can maintain that potential energy because it's non-commutative, and so it then gets built up into the macro scale due to this non-commutativity. But because it's non-commutative, it's also this eternal flowing that's interactive, and so the more you practice it, the more you're part of this impersonal, um, like female awareness that's through the right side vagus nerve. Because again, the female is yang internally. So if you do the psychic tantra with the female, then eventually your energy keeps cycling and cycling to a higher frequency, and then the right side vagus nerve just keeps getting activated more and more, and then eventually that activates the wan chi of the heart, the through the right side of the heart. Um, and so in Mahayana Buddhism, they call this emptying out the realm of bliss. You empty out the realm of bliss, and then you begin to empty out the realm of form. But unfortunately, that's as far as you can take it because it's based on that external form of the what would normally be lust on the with the external form of beauty, wherever that's for the male, that triggers that the sexual drive, the reproductive drive, and so that's as far as you can take it, is that you create this interwoven non-local wan chi field with the person, the female, but then at that point you would both have to practice the what in Mahayana Buddhism is called the formless realm, which is the meditation on based on listening, just not with your eyes closed, and no longer based on a interpersonal psychic dynamic. with the eyes open as a that's driven by that lower emotional reproductive drive or whatever, which again would be the sullied, stirred, or corrupt illusory agent. So essentially, the tantra acts like a catalyst to then activate the wan qi of the heart, this right side vagus nerve. But then once it's and so like for example, one time I fasted for 5 days when I was working in a warehouse. And I asked Qigong Master Jim Nance to keep an eye on me because he was staying at our cabin at the time. This was in 2015, and I had a female coworker who she just started working, and she was attracted to the chi, and I explained to her what it was we were working together just side by side. And so she was like half my age, and she was like she had a lot of physical energy. The she was had a lot of reproductive energy. And so then um so I just let the chi flow into her, and then it kept activating her right side vagus nerve, and then her energy, when her right side vagus nerve got um activated, then it would cause her yin chi to then flow back into me. And so then by doing that, we kept just cycling the yin qi into deeper and deeper levels of the vagus nerve activation. So I was working in the warehouse, so I was doing heavy physical labor, but I fasted the whole time for 5 days. I had no food, and my voice got super deep because like it's what they call the like Tibetan chanting. Like you'll hear the monks do this where they're oh, I can't even do it right now because I'm not but basically what they discovered is that you have to first meditate to relax the throat muscles, and you relax the throat muscles through the right side vagus nerve activation. And that's what like Wim Hof does that too, because when you do the tumo breathing, again, you're activating that right side vagus nerve, or what they call the Shi breathing is what was called at Shaolin. That's what Robert Peng teaches. But Chin Lin, he does not teach the breathing exercise, and the reason is like again, like you look what happened with Wim Hof, and he was doing it in the water because he also teaches this like cold water immersion thing. And then so people are doing the breathing exercise in the water, and then they're passing out in the water, and then they drown to death. It's terrible. And there's a guy on YouTube, he's like he's been following he was a follower of Wim Hof, but now he's speaking out against Wim Hof because there's been like lawsuits about it because I don't know, there's been I don't know, like maybe like 30 people have actually drowned in the water from doing this. I don't know why, what the problem is with Wim Hof. He's because he's obsessed with the ice water. They call him the Ice Man, so he does the exercises in the water, and then he's like, "But don't do this," and then but of course your actions speak louder than your words. But if you go to the Taoist Yoga, Alchemy, and Immortality book, there's a website. The guy who wrote the book, his grandson is the lineage holder. He's still alive, and he did the same ice bath immersion based on that tumo. Creating the internal fire from the meditation. So he actually went like longer than Wim Hof. He broke the record or whatever. Um, I don't know it always takes me a while to find that website for the guy's, the author of the book. It's like it's spelled differently in Chinese too, but I think it's his last name was spelled like Zhao, and I can't remember what his first name is, but if you search like Zhao and then Taoist Yoga, that I think it's like Zhao Bizen, something like that. Zhao Bizen. That's probably gonna get the website. And then anyway, I'll find it later. I'll put it in the video description. Um, so so basically, so basically, I overused my energy. That's how I used up my Wan Chi energy is having this sullied, stirred, and corrupt evil fire of the heart that then creates the illusory agent. So what happens is then you have the evil fire is the yin chi that's has the wrong biophoton message. It's the wrong biophoton signal because the only way you can create the wan chi in through the alchemy of the yin chi and yang chi that is by having the correct biophoton message. And what is the correct biophoton intention or message? It's the intention of the emptiness, the intention of a logical inference of the absolute void, meaning it's the realm of formless. In Buddhism they call it, the realm of formless or the emptiness or the void that you cannot see. And since our whole modern civilization is based on visual perception, then obviously it goes against all of our modern living. Like for me, I trained as a musician from a young age, and so I just naturally I was lucked out because I had my eyes closed and I'm memorizing music, and that's when activated the heart, the Wan Chi, and people thought I was stoned all the time because I was just laughing with joy. I felt great joy, and I didn't know why. And then I got an EEG because I was part of this paid medical study at the university. Just because you're a student, you need some money on the weekends. And the nurse she was in shock. She's like, "Your alpha brainwaves are really strong. They're really high," and she couldn't believe it. And I'm like, all of a sudden I realized that it was because of my music training. Like that was the only explanation. And then so this started to make me wonder. So in other words, um, like in our culture, there you cannot you cannot waste your time any worse than sitting in your room with your eyes closed. But ironically, that's the secret of free energy. That is the secret of alchemy, is to rely on listening. But if you look at the history of humanity, we originate as primates from the rainforest. And when you live in the rainforest, the primary perception is actually listening. And there's some human cultures that live in the rainforest. They even have no real depth perception. They lost their sense of depth perception because you can't see very far in when you're in thick rainforest. And so when you rely on listening as your primary perception, then if you look at the history of humanity, with science we can reverse engineer our history, so they know from the latest DNA science that we separated our original human culture was the Khoisan that separated from the pygmies, and that was 225,000 years ago. But both the Khoisan and the pygmies, they both have the same, like strikingly similar culture that's focused on music, healing and this training, and it's the exact same training. The Khoisan even say to visualize fire at the base of your spine, and this will cause the water to then turn into steam, and they call the steam the num, and that's a female power of the universe. And if you study the Khoisan healing, you find out it's the exact same thing as what was taught in India as yoga, and in China as Taoist and Buddhist yoga meditation. And so this actually is our original human culture. It goes back to 225,000 years ago. But then as agriculture developed, you had the um, you had it basically you had humans switching over to visual perception becoming dominant, and then also all sorts of problems started to develop due to left brain dominance with right hand technology. And I go into that in my 2012 book, so I'm not gonna focus on that. But one of the fascinating things in Taoist alchemy is they say like your left ear is yang qi, but your left eye is yin qi, and then your right ear is yin qi and your right eye is yang qi. And so they say that when you open up the third eye, you're hearing with your eyes, and they have these are what the so-called like koans in Zen. With Zen Buddhism originates from China as Chan Buddhism, and it actually originates from India as Dhyan, which means concentration in meditation. It's original, the primary source of samadhi. So that it's based on these logical paradoxes because you're listening to time directly. So when they say inner fire um, being evil, what what's happening is that the inner fire is going outside of your body through this psychic biophoton connection. Like I said when I started out this rant over an hour ago, that science has proven that we have biophotons that go out of our eyes. And so again, the reason the inner fire is evil is because actually it's not inner fire, it's connected through this the Wan Chi secret of the universe, that's actually this non-local, or what non-dualism connection. That's it's neither inner nor outer. And so it's this like logical paradox that I'm just gonna leave it at that and close down this latest rant. And we'll talk to you later. Thanks.